you. Thank you.
All right. Sure.
We are going to post on the UFS website a copy of all the PowerPoint presentations, so you'll be able to access those later.
All right, good morning. It's still morning, I believe. My name is Pam Mills. I'm a chemistry professor at Hunter College. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor George Otte for this next talk. George is the Chief Academic Officer for the CUNY School of Professional Studies, which has both undergraduate and graduate degrees, and I think you just heard about the nursing degree that are online. George is also a faculty member at the Graduate Center in English, in Urban Education, and in Interactive Technology and Pedagogy. So I think if you look at the bio, you can see that George has been a leader in online education for the 21st century. And now that I've heard about the 4 waves, I guess he was probably part of the first wave too, but I'm not sure. So it's been my good fortune to be able to work with George for the past 2 years. And so I want to tell you one thing that's not in the bio. George is as skeptical, I would guess, as the most skeptic in this room on online education. He's as much of a proponent as the most active proponent in this room for online education. It's called living in the gray zone. I think of it as a no fear, no zeal approach to online education. I just want to say, what is it all about? It's all about asking how we can use the new tools for learning and teaching at CUNY. And that's what my experience for the last 2 years has been. So let's hear from George about the CUNY experience.
Sorry for making everybody seasick. Trying to find out whether or not the clicker would work. I didn't realize it was in the middle of the presentation somehow. Because there's been a trend with Tony, the chancellor, to sort of talk about how we got here. I would like to say that, not least of all because Tony referred to me as an administrator, that I was faculty until 2008, and then, what happened? Good question. The other thing I'd like to say is that I was a UFS, University Faculty Senator for 10 years. I started in CUNY at Baruch in 1986. And my interest in this has always been around pedagogy and faculty development, which is the sort of thing I did. You know, the old joke about faculty development, it's the same as teaching, except the students aren't as well behaved. And so I love that. I loved playing with the tools, not because of the tools themselves, but because of the promise of connection that they held out, and I think is increasingly realized. I will also say, and I hope he'll forgive me for this, that David Birdsell and I hope a lot of you know David. He's I guess now the dean. Is he still the dean of the School of Public Affairs? Great guy. He and I, in 1996, developed something we grandly called the Electronic Campus for Baruch. It was basically file sharing and discussion boards. We didn't realize that other people were further along, and tried the first exercise in blended learning there. And we had an awful lot of fun until we realized that other people had, I started fooling around with WebCT at that point in time, had better tools than we had. So we've already discovered, and I want to get right to that online education is kind of like a Rorschach test. A lot of it depends on what comes to mind. I like to think of the parable of the blind monks and the elephant. Depending on which part of the elephant they're grabbing onto, they think they've got an entirely different thing or beast. If you think about proprietaries first or MOOCs, you probably have a very different image of online learning than a lot of us did. Tony and I go to the same conferences, and there was this wonderful sort of awful moment when it was the same year Sebastian Truan's interview came out that Kolner and Argwal presented at what was then called the Sloan C Conference. It's now the Online Learning Consortium. And there was the headline in Chronicle of Higher Ed the next day, traditional online educators react to MOOC providers' talks, or something like that. And everybody was walking around going, traditional? I'm not traditional. I was always bleeding edge. What happened? So there's a lot that has happened, a lot that has changed. A danger just pointed out by Karen and others that we want to be leery of overgeneralizing, but I would say that the single greatest change, and I'm not sure which wave this is in, Tony, is that we've reached a point where 95% of institutions of public higher education offer online instruction. And it's a lot less, as it used to be when we got started, these little sort of mutant offshoots and satellite operations. It's much more integrated with the way those institutions work and what they do. And as the chancellor said, and this is a figure that's been true all along, even back in the days when people were talking about distance education, that the average distance education provider was reaching 70 to 80% of the people taking that within the same area code, within a short drive of the point of origin of that education. So this was not about beaming it to the other side of the world or pulling in students from other countries or something like that. It really was always about serving the students we had at hand, and we've really awakened to that fact. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about what online ed is for the moment. I want to say a few things. I feel I need at this point, particularly, to say a few things about what it isn't. And one thing is that it's not this. You've seen the headlines, and I'm really referring to the New York Times headlines of 2012, which was the year of the MOOC. Campus tsunami, revelation hits the universities. That's David Brooks and Tom Friedman, respectively. What was it? Clayton Christensen said that in 20 years, fully half of the universities would be gone. They would disappear. They would be sort of automated out of existence. I really don't think that's true. I think this is a good way of thinking about that. If you believe that, we're really sort of in the era of Ben Franklin and electricity and not that much further along. The other thing it's not is a solution to all the problems in higher ed, to soaring costs and incredibly burdensome student debt and administrative bloat and whatever else you want to ascribe to what some people call the crisis in higher ed. This is not the way to fix things. This is not the silver bullet. And it's also another thing that hasn't happened. The reason I'm a cartoon freak. I don't know how many people recognize this. This is from Chuck Jones's realization of Dr. Seuss's The Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. That you can't really see at all is Max, his dog, pulling that entire sled of stolen toys and Christmas trees and stuff like that. And online education is only going to work the way some people tout it as working or hype it as working when the laws of physics are bended so that things can work the same way in cartoons that they do in real life. So what it is generally, and this came up, and I think it's an important answer, I don't think it's the only answer, is that it's really a way of achieving the same ends by different means. I don't like to use the term mode of delivery because I don't believe instruction is something you can package and deliver. I think that sounds like a textbook to me and not a course. A course is distended socially and temporally. It's complicated by the people involved in it and how they complicate that. It happens over time. Ideally, it happens in kind of a community of practice or evolving practices. And I think that's no less true in online than it is in face-to-face. I don't think online is old wine in new bottles. I think it's a transformative medium, and things happen differently there. But when people ask how they happen, I thought, Tony, you were going to go here. There is a website you can go to called No Significant Difference. Google it, you know. This is an argument that's going to go on, I think, well into the next millennium, perhaps to be argued by androids or cyborgs or whatever at that point. But the question is really what's the difference? And the most important study to date, published and revised in 2010, sponsored by the Department of Education, is what some people call the Barbara Means study. And I say that because if you say, put in Barbara Means and online learning, you'll get this free PDF, and you can read it at your leisure. And basically what it found is in a meta-analysis of 57 different studies of comparability between online, face-to-face, and blended, that online was a little bit better, and blended was significantly better. And I, frankly, as somebody who's been doing this for a while, that's not counterintuitive. That's not all that needs to be said on the subject, but let's see. So if that's true, why isn't everybody doing it? I have to ask sort of the rhetorical question here. I guess the single most important answer at this point in time is something that people have polled over and over again. This is a 2012 study done by Jeff Seaman and Elaine Allen called Conflicted, which is really sort of a mild way of putting faculty's attitudes towards uses of technology. In fact, it found that almost 2/3 of faculty are resistant to or oppose the use of online education. And that is the same number or proportion when they polled that back in 2002. This is a 2012 study, so we haven't moved the needle at all. There was some speculation at that point, because there is some discussion of MOOCs, if all the hype around sort of these massive open online courses had actually hurt things. And then just weeks ago, it was the end of October, there was a Gallup poll on faculty attitudes in technology that basically came to the same conclusion, that the majority of faculty resist the use of online education. And I think there are probably very good reasons why. I want to be careful about the issue of more work. I was very recently faculty myself. All the faculty I know work very hard, always have. I make no distinctions, by the way, between adjunct and full-time faculty there. And which is why I choose my words carefully. I refer to the specter of more work. What is really going on here, and it's very important, is that anything you do for the first time is harder than when you do it later. First time I rode a bike, I broke my nose. It was not a good experience. It was not what I concluded would be my experience with bike riding ever after, or I was so assured by my parents. And now when I get back on a bike, it's like climbing on a bike. So yes, it's a little more difficult the first time out. There's a little more anxiety involved. There's a mutual friend of some of us in the room, Greg Hislop, who's done a study and found that when people log very carefully what they do in face-to-face and online, the difference is the distribution of time and not the amount of time. And that there is some evidence, especially in some disciplines, that it saves time because you've got this repertoire of cool stuff that you can bring up. There is the question of adequate support. And what does that mean, by the way? It means everything. It means the full package. It means technological support. Do your systems work? Do you have 24/7 help desks and things like that? And do you have the support to get ready for this sort of thing? And that's a very important aspect of that. It's something I want to return to. Over in that latest Gallup poll, over 50% of the students, 50 of the students, of the faculty polled, found that they felt that they did not have adequate support. It was the only thing that they agreed with the administrators on. So I think the single biggest reason people don't do it is that they don't have a good reason to do it. I think if you want somebody to change, break from the tried and true, and do something else, you should give them a good reason. And I'm not sure that we've ever effectively articulated that. I think the Chancellor's working on it. I got to hear him do that this morning. I'm going to try to do it a little bit myself. I think but you need a good reason why. And there are lots of reasons, so it's going to be kind of difficult to generalize. But let me try a little bit. Some of you know, how many people were involved in the development of online courses under the Sloan grants from 2001 to 2008? I know there were some of you here in the audience. So, yeah, boy, was that fun. It was a grassroots thing. It was, if you wanted to do it, come on, you know. We'll get you RT for a course equivalent. We'll put you in a course with other people who are doing this, a course site, so you can inhabit the environment that you're going to be using. You can have online discussions on how to have online discussions. It was all very meta. And at the end, you have a course site, and everybody else looks at it and says it's good, or you need to do this, that, and the other thing. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful example of innovation at the lower levels. There's a guy, it's called Carlson's Law. He's the head of SRI, which used to be Stanford Research International, is now one of those acronyms that doesn't stand for anything, just SRI. Anyway, he said that innovation from the top down is powerful but dumb. And innovation from the bottom up is smart but relatively powerless. And the goal is somehow to meet there in the middle. Get the people who want to have the individual reasons to do this, meeting with a kind of interest or mandate from on high. After we'd done this for a while, and there's a fascinating, there's like a 80-page study done by the Center for the Advanced Study of Education on our experience with online courses. What we found was the single most important thing, and it correlated with success and faculty satisfaction, student satisfaction, was in fact the amount of interaction. Chancellor mentioned, for instance, that he knew his students better. It's actually, and some people don't see this going in, it's more intimate rather than less intimate than the face-to-face environment. There are these icebreaker forums, everybody introduces themselves. You know about how many dogs and kids and hobbies people have before you've hit the end of the first week. I still have baby pictures from some of my online students. You don't get that in a face-to-face environment. And one of the reasons you don't is that when you ask for participation, everybody can participate and not chew up class time. It's a huge difference. It's something, again, that I don't think a lot of us realized when we did that. That if you ask a question, everybody can answer, and that's fine. As a matter of fact, everybody can respond to everybody else's answer, and that's all good. We also discovered that it was a good way of serving in-service students, students who work, students in the professions. They brought up the example of nursing students. Very, very important. So we got to this point where we'd done all of this stuff, and we decided to do degrees. And we decided to localize that. Online courses are easy. Online degrees are hard. Online degrees are hard because you have to surround them with all this other stuff, from library access and support services to sort of cradle to grave. That's, sorry, wrong metaphor. Admissions to career placement. Everything has to be online. And we did that on the basis of information we got from OIRA, the Office of Institutional Research here at CUNY. I don't know how many people know this. 10,000 students every single year drop out, but they're not dropouts, they're stopouts. They leave in good academic standing, and we know from checking against the National Clearinghouse database that they don't go anywhere else. Why? Because life happened. You know, we could go into all the reasons, but it's work obligations, family obligations, the sort of things our face-to-face students often do too, but maybe not to the degree where it just stops them in their tracks. So SBS was created around CUNY's mission of access and a different angle on that, which is going after those students who need a college degree, who doesn't these days, if you're an adult, and you want to make money, and who can't spend that time on campus because of the way their lives are structured. And it's been a great success. And as a matter of fact, we know from the information we've collected about the students at the School of Professional Studies, they're just like CUNY students everywhere, maybe a little more so. that, for instance, 3/4 of them are women. And over 40% of them are single parents. You know, you start looking at the data, you realize why these people are taking their degrees online. Not because they think that's the better way, but because they don't have a choice. So that's something we did, and it works. It works for a specific population. And if you want to know how big that population is, think about these statistics for a moment. 31 million people in this country, 31 million adults, excuse me, have some college and no degree. That's sort of mind-blowing to me. 11 million of them live in this state. 1 million of them live in this city. So the issue of access is a very real one. I want to pose another possibility because I think it's one that a lot of people have already gotten behind, maybe people in this room, and more could do that. We know that one of the major emphases is going to be on more retention, better retention, higher graduation rates. And the new slogan is finish in 4. Finish in 4 means taking 15 credits a term. And a lot of people go, there's no way that's going to happen. Think how much more likely it is to happen if the students can take one of those courses, maybe even 2, in a blended or online format. Again, I started at Baruch. One of the things we did was an analysis of where our students come from. 80% of them don't live in the same borough we teach in. EDUCAUSE Review, the issue before last, Morris Mail of City Tech and Mariana Regalado of Brooklyn did a study of CUNY students, longitudinal, and found out that the average CUNY student, and this is going to be a surprise to absolutely no one, the average CUNY student commutes an hour, 45 minutes to an hour one way every time they come to campus. So it's not, time is a real issue, and it's a real issue for students who maybe just want to take 1 or 2 classes online. Why would that be such a bad idea? This is actually sort of subtext, and I see Jennifer. This is a commercial for general education courses offered by SPS because they're all online, and I happen to know they're really, really good. But it's something everybody could do. It's something all the campuses could do. Again, just the people who want to do them, because they would serve a real purpose for our students. What does it take to do it well then, just in case you want to do that? It takes support. It takes lots of support. It takes real commitment, actually. And I think part of that, by the way, is this sort of informal community building that we do on the CUNY Academic Commons, where there are specific groups not only for online learning and blended learning, the so-called hybrid initiative, but also specific fields and disciplines who are interested in doing this, or interested in doing gaming in CUNY and in our classes. Support means effective faculty development for this. It means that should be experiential. You know, you should again sort of inhabit the course sites, work with other peers to develop your work, and reliable technology. I don't mean to whisper that, I just don't need to shout it. It needs a coalition of the willing. I used to say conspiracy of the willing. I think we broadened to a coalition at this point. People who want to do this should be able to do this. They should be allowed to do this. And to some extent they have. They're more empowered in some places than others and more supported in some places than others. And for faculty, you just need time to prepare. You cannot do online learning seat of the pants. You cannot just go in and wing it in the online environment. You really do need to prepare, and you need to have time to do that. And we need to find a way of supporting that. I could tell you about the SPS model if you want, but let's move on to whom it doesn't work for. People who think it's a fairy tale that this works, and people who have a fairy tale idea of how it works, that you can just go in and just lurk and it'll happen for you. No, doesn't work that way. Which is why retention is not great in online courses. They go in, find out it's rigorous. It's really, in some ways, more demanding than the face-to-face stuff, especially in large lecture courses. It won't work for people who won't prepare. You really have to sort of plan and map out what you're doing, especially as a faculty member, to some extent even as a student. You need to manage your time well. Asynchronous anytime means infinitely procrastinatable, if that's a word, for faculty and students. And you really need to sort of commit to going in there. So I'm at the end here. You know, I talked a lot. I talked too much. I want to sort of bottom line it for you, give you a big reason to do it and a big reason not to do it. The big reason for me to do it is because it's about connection. Any 14-year-old will tell you that's what technology is all about. It's about connection. And that connection is to content. Content, increasingly, that it is itself something that offers possibilities for interaction. Interaction with other students. I mentioned the case study of CUNY Online. The students reported that they had twice the interaction with instructors that they did in